Ladies and gentlemen, this is the evolution of Call of Duty Zombies perks by XD. So I got to give a big shout out to my man. And ladies and gentlemen,
within Call of Duty Zombies, I believe that no perk has had a greater impact on the game than the one I'm about to discuss.
Okay,
but before we do that, we must start from the very beginning.
My guess is it's either PhD or double tap. Just putting that out there. Let's see.
With the release of Verrucht in Call of Duty World at War, Call of Duty Zombies was introduced to its first ever perk system, with the 4 perks being released as Juggernog, Speed Cola, Quick Revive, and Double Tap 1.
Yeah, it's crazy because Noct didn't have any perks. I know on a lot of variations you have the Mule Kick, but that didn't happen until Black Ops 1.
So
that's a
the
big
so-called Fab 4, the OG
the
perks,
OGs.
you name it, the most iconic perks in all of
If nobody got me, the OG4 got me.
Zombies.
That's what I gotta say.
And with the release of these 4, the game also provided the player with 4 perk slots.
Yes.
And so if you were playing on solo, you would grab Juggernog for health, Speed Cola for a decreased reloading time, and Double Tap 1.0 for an increased fire rate on automatic weapons. And as Quick Revive does not have a self-revive effect on World at War solo, buying it would provide the player with no further assistance and would essentially just be a waste of 1,500 points.
Which is why I think in a lot of ways, not many people you see today go back to World at War. World at War today is 17 years old, released all the way back in 2008. And yes, Double Tap and Quick Revive were not fully optimized for solo gameplay because Double Tap 1.0 just didn't really do enough, especially for like single firing weapons. And then Quick Revive, like you said, was 1,500 even on solo for World at War. It was not 500. So you could tell that even just between World at War and Black Ops 1, that amazing change is what you'll see probably up until BO3, because then BO4 just put the whole thing on its head, man, for real.
And so this means that as only 3 out of the 4 perk slots are used on solo, there are no decisions within the game that have to be made by the player in terms of what perks they will choose to have for the remainder of the game. And as such, there are no real problems where some perks are neglected and never bought by the player. As in World at War Solo, the player can hold all perks that are useful to them at the same time. And if you are playing on co-op, you simply just add Quick Revive for the ability to revive down teammates faster, and as such you will have 4 perks filling 4 perk slots. So
it's crazy because it really wasn't until Ascension where I think people noticed the 4 perk limit, because Ascension is the one and only Zombies map that added 2 new perks, being Stamina Up and PhD, and that was the big map to when the choice of your perks actually became a big deal, especially with the monkeys.
Once again, no issues in terms of deciding what perks the player will have for the remainder of the game. And so overall, while yes, this is a very basic perk system, it is pretty solid at the same time.
Very true.
Now moving on to Black Ops 1 Zombies, and we get a small but crucial change to one of these perks. Quick Revive now has a self-revive effect on solo, with the player able to purchase 3 self-revives before the perk disappears.
I know a lot of future Call of Duty games also added the Quick Revive effect as just like a self-revive feature, and I always think that that was dumb. The one thing I do like about modern COD is how Quick Revive actually regenerates your health faster, but they should always keep the self-revive in Quick Revive, because if you can just buy an infinite mount like in Cold War, it just makes the game too easy.
Single implementation changed the perk system dramatically.
And I could argue that Quick Revive is one of the best perks of all time, and Jug, especially after BO1, they're almost mandatory for every game.
As now, Quick Revive is suddenly just as important as Juggernog, if not even more important, and is now essential to any solo game of zombies. However, the full effect of this change was not immediately felt, as there were no new perks introduced in either Kino der Toten or 5. And so a solo game of zombies now saw the 4 available perks filling the 4 available slots, just like they already did on co-op.
But a lot of people don't actually know that Mule Kick didn't come out until Moon. And so you do see a lot of people run Mule Kick, obviously, instead of Double Tap on these OG maps. And Treyarch has never done that since Black Ops 1, where they've added a perk back into the cycle. We all thought in BO2 they'd do that with PhD. Nope.
which again meant no decisions needing to be made by the player. It was at this time I would argue that Call of Duty Zombies was in a sort of comfort stage. With only 4 available perks and the recent addition of Pack-a-Punch, there seemed to be only one style of playing the game, which would be to grab your 4 perks, get the Wonder Weapon and either an LMG or assault rifle, and then Pack-a-Punch the both of them. Something had to give. The game was too predictable and didn't have a ton of replayability, and that's exactly what we got with DLC 1.
Exactly.
With the introduction of Ascension, Call of Duty Zombies was introduced to 2 brand new perks. Stamina Up, which would increase the player's running speed and duration, and the notorious PhD flopper, removing all explosive and fall damage, as well as creating an explosion whenever the player dolphin dived.
Ascension completely changed the game because with the inclusion of Stamina Up, you see a lot of speedruns on Call of Duty Zombies where they buy nothing but Stamina Up, because Stamina Up is the 100% only perk that you need to be able to speedrun faster. So for that, it became one of the greatest perks of all time instantly. And PhD at this point was so overpowered that they needed 2 whole games to remove it, quite literally. Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3 do not include PhD because of how broken it was in these original maps.
Which, in my opinion, are the 2 best perks ever introduced after the OG4.
I agree.
And these perks saw completely contrasting futures. Stamina Up went on to feature in nearly every succeeding map after Ascension, and PhD Flopper unfortunately really saw no consistency in terms of where it would once again show up.
Until Black Ops 4, and that was the time when it completely ruined the actual point of PhD, because all you would buy PhD for in Black Ops 4 is for the Helion Salvo rocket launcher.
But without getting too far ahead of myself, the introduction of these 2 perks created what I believe to be the greatest perk system we have ever seen in Zombies.
I still
agree. As with them came a multitude of different styles of play, and I'll explain how. So now with there being 6 perks and only 4 slots available, players now have a decision to make. Juggernog and Quick Revive are absolute must-haves and are essential to ensuring survival within the game. So there's 2 perk slots gone already. Speed Cola, whilst not as important, I would consider it to be necessary due to many weapons within the game having slow reload speeds. But you could certainly argue otherwise.
Especially because Speed Cola in this game increased your reload rate by 50%, but in Black Ops Cold War and Black Ops 4, it was nerfed down to 30%. And so there's no Speed Cola in Black Ops 4, but when you get all of your perks, you get that 30% reload buff. And I just think it was never as good as it was like in Black Ops 1.
And so now we are left with 3 perks and 1 perk slot. And this is where the decision making comes in. Because despite a lot of people having said that PhD is too overpowered, I actually believe it is well balanced.
I agree.
And there are an equal number of scenarios where double tap and stamina up are the preferred option. I mean, are you planning on using a slow firing LMG? Then grab double tap.
The only reason why Treyarch thought PhD Flopper was too overpowered was because of the M1911 upgraded. When you upgrade the starting pistol, you get the Mustang and Sally's, and that could pretty much guarantee you around 30. And that back in the day was a very high round, which is the reason that you would see it in Origins, the only Zombies map that doesn't have the M1911 on Black Ops 2, and a lot of people were upset about that, and so they completely just changed it until Black Ops 4, and then nobody cared.
Are you planning to use explosive weapons?
Exactly.
Then grab PhD. Are you planning on training? Then it's probably a good idea to grab Stamina Up. The ability of each of these 3 perks to cater to different styles of play is why I believe this is the greatest perk system we have ever seen in Zombies.
And to be quite honest, Call of the Dead perfected it, because every time you took out George Romero, he had 250,000 HP per player. He would grant you a new perk on top of the 4 perk limit. And I still believe that with modern COD games, removing the perk limit, it makes the game too easy. It makes it so that just grabbing your perks is just like clicking a bunch of buttons. Whereas back in the day with Black Ops 1, it was a strategic choice, because on maps like Call of the Dead, you could get all the perks, but you had to really put in that effort and understand the map. And I don't think we've ever gotten to such a balanced, a perfection system like we did all the way back in Call of the Dead BO1.
and is a contributing factor as to why the DLC maps of Black Ops 1 are still able to compete with the more modern maps. Now, there were 2 other perks released in Black Ops 1, which I will say, credit where credit is due, are in amazing spots to reveal new perks. With Deadshot Daiquiri being at the top of Call of the Dead's Lighthouse, and Mule Kick being released with an amazing backdrop of the earth behind it.
It's absolutely beautiful, and also, Deadshot just kind of sucks in the OG games, which is just unfortunate. It became kind of the runt of the litter, if you could. Like, it's just terrible. And it's nice to see that it's gotten buffed over time, but now with Black Ops 4, there were so many perks at your disposal. People were just like too bombarded, right? I miss when every Zombies map included a new perk, and Mule Kick arguably is one of the most important perks of all time. Like, you could
Unfortunately, however, these two just don't really live up to the other perks.
I agree
but to be honest, at the same time, they really didn't have to. The perk system was in a great state already. And so where did it all go wrong?
They didn't have to because you could still get those perks outside of the 4 perk limit.
When did it all start going downhill?
Exactly.
Well, it happened in the very next map.
I agree.
As we move into the first map of Black Ops 2, Transit, we see a complete overhaul of the Black Ops 1 perk system. We retain Quick Revive, Juggernog, Speed Cola, and Stamina Up, but PhD Flopper, Mule Kick, Double Tap 1.0, and Deadshot Daiquiri are nowhere to be found. Although Mule Kick and Deadshot Daiquiri would soon feature again in future maps, PhD Flopper would never again resurface in its former glory, and Double Tap 1.0 would be gone forever.
I think everybody doesn't really care about the 1.0 removal because 2.0 is just factually a better perk. But removing PhD, I remember, was such a big deal back in the day because it made people not want to use the starting pistol anymore. And I think, like, the balance they had in Black Ops 2 was introducing perma-perks to try and mitigate that. But to be ultimately honest, the best thing they could have done was what Call of the Dead did. Keep the 4 perk limit, but add a way in the Zombies map to get new perks. That's why so many people love Buried on Black Ops 2, because you can go into the Witch's Mansion to continuously get more and more perks.
However, despite this, Transit introduced us to 2 brand new perks. Tombstone, which is possibly the worst perk ever introduced, and is remembered more for its perk jingle than the actual perk itself, which basically says all you need to know about it.
Completely worthless on solo, outside of the one glitch that gives you the 6 perks. And that's the thing. It's like people hated this perk so much that its only usage was to literally just get more of the perks outside of the limit. Like, yeah, Tombstone was cooked. And unfortunately, even Tombstone in modern COD, like with Cold War, is still horrendous. It's bad.
And the other perk we were introduced to was Double Tap 2.0.
A big upgrade.
You see, despite me arguing that Double Tap 1.0 actually has some use within the game, the viewpoint at the time was that it was getting outshined too much by both Stamina Up and PhD Flopper. And so Double Tap 2.0 made a single, but absolute game-changing modification to the perk. So whenever the player originally bought Double Tap 1.0, the fire rate on automatic weapons would increase by about 1/3. And with Double Tap 2.0, the fire rate is still increased by 1/3, but now for every bullet that is fired, 2 bullets come out of the weapon. And this is not just...
This is a beautiful illustration because ultimately, while Double Tap 1.0 is actually good, the issue is you can unfortunately run out of ammo faster, because if you miss any of these bullets, it's honestly just better to not even have it. Whereas Double Tap 2.0, you basically got 2 times as much ammo as you originally did, which is why that game, with all of the gunplay in Black Ops 2, felt so great.
True for automatic weapons. This is true for every single weapon within the game, minus some wonder weapons, I believe, which essentially doubles the damage for just about every gun within the game.
Perfectly
balanced. And it was this single modification that completely broke the perk system, and I believe changed the direction of zombies entirely. As now, with weapons able to be twice as powerful with Double Tap, not only is it now superior to Stamina Up and PhD, it is almost a necessity to run it in every game. And with Juggernaut, Quick Revive, and Speed Cola are all retaining their usefulness, and there's still only being 4 perk slots, there now seem to be no opportunity for the use of different perks.
What I think is unfortunate is that in Black Ops 6 and Black Ops Cold War, obviously, they try and fix this system with salvage and then also the arsenal upgrades and rarity. And I just don't feel like that was the best fix for this, because ultimately, while yes, the OG4 perks are mandatory for your game, I just think that it was really more about figuring out how to have an innovative way to get the rest of the perks, because everybody's always going to love the OG4 perks. It's always going to be a part of the iconicism about Call of Duty Zombies. But the thing is that as soon as you get rid of the perk limit, it's almost like all the perks lose their identity because you can just buy them at any point, you know? And it doesn't feel as much of a boon upgrade as they used to back in the day.
As these 4 perks are just significantly better than the rest.
Yeah.
And now look, I know that this is not true for everyone, and some of you will say that you prefer stamina up over speed cola or whatever. But for the majority of players, this is what their perk loadout will look like.
Because the majority of the players don't look up speedrun strategies. They don't look up high round strategies where maybe you have to use stamina up or PhD, or you're speedrunning with stamina up, obviously. And so, yeah, the majority of the players just want to grab a gun out of the box, shoot it, and have it to be the best. And so that's why I'm saying, let this be the system for the casuals. Just add a way to increase the limit in a fun manner. And that's why I even think Custom Zombies has it the best, where you go up to a place and you're just like, okay, pay 5,000 or 10,000 to increase your perk limit. That's a better system than what we've had in the last like 3 or 4 games for Call of Duty Zombies, in my opinion.
Every time they play the game, as these 4 perks are useful in just about every scenario you can find yourself in within the game. Whereas perks like stamina are only really useful in certain styles of play. And this is a big problem, because now an element of replayability has almost entirely been removed from the game. And ultimately, what I think this came down to was Treyarch's misunderstanding of how well balanced the perk system was in Black Ops 1.
It's funny because every single developer has failed at fixing this issue, except for one developer that isn't even a Zombies developer, being David Vonderhaar, the original creator of Buried. Jimmy Zielinski only worked on Die Rise and Transit. And so it's funny that David Vonderhaar, on his very first attempt of a Zombies map, fixed the perk issue for generations to come. He did a better job than Jason Blundell on BO4. He did a better job with Kevin Drew with the increased perk limit, in my opinion, because it makes you learn the mechanics of the map outside of the OG4. And look what happened with Black Ops 4. You take one of the 4 perks away like Jug and everybody goes AWOL. And so that's why I still think David Vonderhaar, to this day, was the one that actually fixed the perk problem.
And I feel that they tried to fix it by buffing double tap, which they felt was underpowered, and by removing PhD, which they felt was too overpowered. But in the end, just created an even more powerful perk in double tap 2.0.
They made the power gap way too large, and then everybody just stuck to the OGs. I agree with that.
And unfortunately, after this, they were never really able to replicate the well-balanced system of Black Ops 1. But there were a couple of notable attempts.
Let's see it.
What I believe to be the first and second best attempt at fixing this perk system was Mob of the Dead. In Mob of the Dead, we were introduced to the afterlife system. And afterlife in Mob of the Dead could be entered through one of 2 ways. By either interacting with the shock boxes around the map, which is the main method and allows players to keep their perks when returning to normal, or by going down, at which point players will lose all their perks when returning to normal.
I always say Mob of the Dead is actually more loved than Origins by a lot of casual zombie players because Quick Revive is mitigated to the afterlife system. And I think it's also what got so many more people into zombies, because a lot of people are bad at zombies. And so with that afterlife, they got a quick revive every single round. And that is what makes Mob of the Dead still to this day, in my opinion, better than Origins for every single player gap of skill.
Which meant that Afterlife effectively replaced Quick Revive, and as such it did not feature on this map, and therefore freed up a perk slot, which you might be thinking is great. Players now have the opportunity again for alternative play styles. Except there are only 2 perks to choose from in the map, and one of them is, You guessed it, Deadshot Daiquiri.
Yeah, and nobody buying this, let me tell you.
Now, even at the best of times, Deadshot Daiquiri doesn't really put up much of a fight against other perks, but it is especially lackluster when you compare it to the brand new perk that was introduced on Mob of the Dead, which is Electric Cherry.
And it's funny because Electric Cherry actually had the inverse effect of Double Tap. So Double Tap became stronger over time from 1.0 to 2.0. Electric Cherry became weaker over time because with Black Ops 3, the introduction of Widow's Wine, you would see that Electric Cherry is way more powerful on Mob of the Dead than any map in Black Ops 3. And it goes to show that by Black Ops 3, you could tell Jason Modell ran into a big problem with the only perk being introduced on that game being Widow's Wine. And then his solution was to just completely destroy the perk system in Black Ops 4, trying to add mitigations like how they did in Mob of the Dead, but it just truly never worked.
A perk that produces a stunning effect on the zombies whenever you reload.
Yes.
And if there ever was a perk that was tailor-made for Mob of the Dead, it is Electric Cherry.
Yes,
I mean,
I agree.
Very close quarters, narrow training areas, and a wonder weapon that reloads after every shot. I mean, Deadshot Daiquiri never really stood a chance.
Electric Cherry fit this map's aesthetic more than Widow's Wine on Shadow's Evil. Like, you would have thought Widow's Wine would have been a zombies perk to feature on Zetsubo no Shima, the one map with spiders. But no, for some reason it comes out on Shadows of Evil. And that's why I genuinely believe after BO4, the perk system has just been mutilated to just something completely different from the original games.
And what this meant was the issue of having 4 perks that are significantly better than the rest wasn't really resolved.
Exactly.
As Quick Revive was basically just replaced by Electric Cherry.
Yeah.
I mean, where's PhD and Stamina? They would have both been perfect for this map and made for great competition between Electric Cherry. Not to mention the fact that Treyarch decided to tease PhD by...
This was really where, like, so many people were upset. I will never forget when people saw PhD in the elevator shaft on Die Rise, for example, and then here, people were getting upset. And a lot of people were also extremely upset once PhD came back in Origins, where the Mauser was the starting pistol, right? So, like I said, I just feel like the perks have always sort of been an issue, I would agree, ever since Black Ops 2. And even with Black Ops 6, sure, I like the augment system, but it's like, it's always better when the perk system is featured in-game. And that's what we really haven't seen since Black Ops 1, 2, and 3.
Putting it outside the map on the docks. Like, this really was a missed opportunity to bring back PhD and have a perk system that would have worked almost identical to Black Ops 1. And it honestly makes me mad just thinking about it. Although, however, just 2 maps later, we would see what I believe to be the closest to the BO1 perk system we ever saw. Origins.
Yes.
Now, in Origins, Treyarch did something a little bit different to Mob of the Dead.
And this is also, I think, why a lot of people, like skillful players, love Origins, is because of the red perk dig-ups. I always say, like, the red perk dig-ups, the buried witches, this encourages you to learn the mechanics. It makes it so that you actually want to learn about the mode, where casual fans, they can just get the original 4 perks and just enjoy themselves. But if you're a skillful player, you can go that extra distance and get more perks. So I never thought that the addition of more perks was a problem until it came to BO4, where it was all in the menus and outside of gameplay. It's really just how it was integrated in Black Ops 2 that they should have stuck with, and yet they never have since this point.
They decided to remove the double tap machine from the map, and instead made double tap a reward for spending 30,000 points within the map. It is also available in the Wonder Fizz machine too. But having it as a reward meant that players could grab double tap as their 5th perk, therefore freeing up a perk slot.
It's amazing because it encourages you to learn the map. It encourages you also to, like, actually understand the mechanics, and you get rewarded from it. That's why, like, this whole idea with Cold War and BO6 just to remove the perk limit is stupid, because you just wait until the Wonder Fizz spawns in. Even on Black Ops 6, okay, sure, it spawns in later, but regardless, when you play a map like Liberty Falls, you can't get certain perks like Vault Trade, for example. And so what do you have to do? You just have to wait until round 25. And so I don't think That is good game design. It was better in the older games.
And this time, Origins featured 8 perks instead of Mob of the Dead's 5, with players now able to choose between Stamina, Deadshot Daiquiri, Electric Cherry, and PhD Flopper, finally returning again.
Again, though, unfortunately, no M1911.
Which, again, you might be thinking is great. Origins essentially just fixed Mob of the Dead's mistakes. But you see, the layout of Origins contains big, wide open spaces, almost entirely contrasting to Mob of the Dead. And so with Electric Cherry best suiting close quarters maps,
it's not really useful.
Daiquiri being Deadshot Daiquiri, and there being no Mustang and Sallies, or any useful explosive weapon to complement PhD, Stamina is an absolute clear winner, and is almost necessary to help traverse all the mud and large distances on the map. And so while yes, Origins did include more perks, it's just unfortunate that only one of them has any real use on the map. And yes, there are the red dig sites on the map which will allow you to get all the perks, but they really are not needed.
They're not needed, and the thing is, though, is it just benefits the player that wants to do everything, which is why I agree, though, there is a problem with usefulness of perks, but still, I don't think the actual solution to this was just to remove the 4 perk limit. Like, I even think IW, Infinite Warfare Zombies, did a better job where they increased the perk limit, but there still was a limit. And on other Zombies maps in IW, there were ways to get more perks. So that is, I think, an amazing addition. It's just really sad because in Black Ops 3, they added Gobblegums to try and fix that. That was a nightmare because you had to spend real money. Then Black Ops 4 introduced a way too complicated system for newer players, so a lot of casual players ran away until Black Ops Cold War. And yes, while I think Cold War has done a good job, and Black Ops 6 has done a good job with augments, it still should be about the map's mechanics outside of the mechanics that you do in the menu for the perks. I think Zombies was at its best when all the mechanics were in the map, in the game, and not in the menus.
Because the other perks aren't going to provide much assistance anyways.
Exactly.
And unfortunately from here on out, none of the BO3 maps were really able to make a dent in breaking through the perk system created by Double Tap 2.0. I mean, yes, we were introduced to Widow's Wine, which is great at what it does, but just doesn't quite do enough.
It just feels missing, and it's so sad. Back in the day, like, we made the Banana Colada video on this channel, and it got like 1 million views, and Treyarch just added it as a microtransaction gobblegum. Like, that, I think, is where we have never seen the perk system fully recover, because ever since then, modern COD Zombies now has completely changed the system. And listen, I like augments in Black Ops 6, but you can't lie to me. There's a meta for each perk and each thing that you can use with the augments. And so it still doesn't solve the inherent issue that I think Black Ops 2 Zombies fixed with maps like Origins and Buried.
And yes, there were ways to get extra perk slots, like in Origins, but it just wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough, and it wasn't as seamless as Origins and Buried.
These 4 perks were just too good. And it is this reason I believe that in Black Ops 4 we end up with this absolute disaster of a perk system.
And also, like, the way this system was designed is so stupid. Blundell wanted to erase what originally was amazing about original Zombies, which is why so many players did not adopt well with this game. And even if you get a perkaholic on this game, you'll get like 6 perks on the left of your screen. But the whole idea as to why you only get 4 perks in this game was because it was called Black Ops 4. I just will never understand that level of thinking from Blundell. It is the stupidest thing. He did so much of the mechanics because it was the 4th title. You have 4 specialist weapons. You have 4 different upgrades that you can do on your Pack-a-Punch. Like, it is the dumbest system ever introduced into Call of Duty Zombies. And it's great that Kevin Drew definitely fixed it from this time, but I still don't think we have reached the heights that we did back in Black Ops 2.
Which I think resulted from Treyarch trying to change the perk system radically,
Yes.
which unfortunately only made it worse.
And I want to reiterate, it is not Treyarch. This was Blundell trying to erase what Jimmy Zielinski set up, and ultimately it destroyed zombies because we were asking and asking and asking for new perks in Black Ops 3, and then finally Black Ops 4 comes out with all of these perks, and 90% of them are useless. You still use a meta in this game, which is the whole reason why they tried to mitigate it. It was a disaster. It was a complete mess.
And the somewhat improved but still lackluster perk system of Cold War.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, would this have all happened without the introduction of Double Tap 2.0? I think
that's a
it's
great
really
question.
difficult to say.
Yeah.
As I feel that a perk like Double Tap 2.0 was always going to happen at some point.
I agree, and I wouldn't put the blame on Double Tap, even though I know a lot of modern COD zombie fans hate that perk and are glad that it's not in the games. I just think it's just about adding in more perks. Sure, keep them in the game, keep them fun, but make it a seamless way that you can get that perk outside of the 4 perk limit. That's why I say I would love a perk limit back. Make it like 5 perks like in Infinite Warfare, but make the other perks worth getting in the side of the map's mechanics. And so it kind of says, like, after zombies has been going on for almost 2 decades, it's almost like we've overcomplicated what made zombies so simple in the first place. So
But
XT,
I believe there are a lot
this is
of
a great
things they
video.
could have done to
Great,
at least
great video.
fix it in some way, which I will be creating a video about
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you did enjoy the video. and
Amazing
feel free
video.
To leave a comment.
Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you check out this video and like this video because this is honestly one of the greatest videos I've seen about the evolution of Call of Duty zombie perks.